Did you know something new is invented every 10 minutes? Join us as we speak to the innovators reinventing our world here on planet Earth and far, far beyond. Welcome to GTWN Now, a podcast brought to you by the Global Telecom Women's Network and sponsored by CMS Global. GTWN Now introduces the movers and the makers at the cutting edge of technology who are committed to keeping us all connected. In each episode, we invite a leading expert to share her experience building life-changing inventions in places and spaces that don't yet exist, and the inspiration they must muster to tackle the impossible. We also ask our guests to share tips, tools, and strategies to reach your own moonshot. I'm your host, Rosalia Gitao, founder of Bixi FinTech for Women and Global Telecom Women's Network International Board member. Welcome to GTWN Now. Welcome back, GTWNers, and thank you for joining us for today's really important episode on artificial intelligence. So AI is everywhere. It's dominating headlines, group chats, our social media feeds. The Merriam-Webster word of 2025 was AI slop. But where are we now in the AI verse since the viral launch of ChatGPT in 2022? Here to help us make sense of it all is AI and legal expert Rachel Free. So Rachel is a triple threat. She's a partner at CMS International Law Firm, where she's a UK and European patent attorney. She also has a master's in AI and a doctorate in vision science. Rachel is a representative before the United Patent Court, and she has patent experience in a range of technical fields, including neural networks, data center storage, cryptography, programming language, machine learning, and quantum computing. She's also a fellow at the Chartered Institute of Patent Attorneys and a member of its Computer Technology Committee, where she's also lectures and acts as an examiner there. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's lovely to be here today. Lovely to meet you, Rosalia.
Lovely to meet you too.
Yep.
So let's just get right into it. We want to define AI. We need to create a framework around our conversation today because, as I mentioned, AI means so many different things to so many different people. So perhaps you can kick us off with some meaning. What is AI? And what does it, more importantly, mean to you, an AI expert?
Well, it's so interesting you asked that question. It made me think back to the time when I was at university studying for my master's in AI, because it was the first homework we had. We had to define what AI was. And so I thought, oh, this will be really straightforward. I'll just go away and look in a few books and there'll be a definition. It'll be fine. But no, I was completely wrong. I discovered that the literature at the time was in disagreement. There was no agreed definition of AI. And that's the same even today, really. And one of the reasons why that is so tricky is that when we're thinking about regulation, if we want to have a blanket regulation for AI technologies, we have to define AI. And obviously that's very contentious because it defines the scope of what would be regulated. So going back to my homework, the answer to the question that I had at the time when I was studying was that AI is a field of study. So it's a field of study where scientists are using computing technology to try to simulate and emulate human intelligence in order to try and glean understanding about what human intelligence is. So in that field of study, we've really now got a large range of different technologies. At the time when I was studying, the main technology was rule-based systems, so expert systems that used rules and languages like Prolog to try to codify human expert knowledge in the form of lots of rules, like if so-and-so, then so-and-so else. So there'll be lots of these if-then rules, and then a rules engine that would when it received a new question that came in, would find matching conditions to the if parts of the rules and trigger the then parts of the rules according to the ones it had matched, and then use that to develop the answer. And that was quite successful at the time for doing things like aging rock samples using images of little fossilized creatures in the rock, because this was a task done by human experts, and by trying to create rules that captured how those human experts could use their knowledge about these little fossilized creatures to age the rock in order to find rocks that might have signs of oil and hydrocarbon accumulations. So that was very successful, but at the time neural networks didn't have the success that they do now, because although the theory was known, it hadn't at the time been possible to use graphics processing units to enable in the number crunching that we have now. And those breakthroughs have really led to large advances in machine learning technology. And that machine learning technology is really what people are referring to today when they speak about AI. They're speaking about machine learning technologies, in particular generative AI, where the machine learning is using attention-based transformer models in very large models with billions or trillions of parameters in order to predict the next word, so that they are very basically predicting the next word when given a prompt, and that word gets repeated many times in order to generate paragraphs and whole books or poems, which can be very useful. And I'm sure many of our listeners will have used Gen AI tools to help them with tasks like writing emails or investigating summaries of long documents and things like this, which is a really useful implementation of these technologies. And that definition of AI really also includes agentic AI and reasoning models. Should I speak about those a bit now, or is that going to be interesting for our listeners?
Absolutely. Yeah. But just before we maybe get into the agentic, I almost want to, not to effectively summarize, but I kind of want to raise perhaps a point that you just made, which is, number one, there is no consensus on an AI definition, right? But number two, the definition in and of itself is amorphous and is being defined over time by the technology that arises. So particularly from a regulatory perspective, I imagine that could be quite challenging. Firstly, start at the basis point of not necessarily being able to define it, but kind of chasing a definition as a technology evolves. Do I have that a bit right about the landscape of AI by definition?
Yes, I would totally agree with you there. There's some definitions of AI that try to say it's something that can make a choice about the next best action in the light of what's gone before. Whether it should include the ability to learn is another debate. And how this question of definition is dealt with in other fields is often through case law. So I'm a patent attorney, and we have a definition in the patent law which includes the word technical, and this word technical is not defined in the law, and we have to look to case law to find out what it means. And that's very useful, because it means that as technology advances, the law is able to evolve and keep pace with that advance in technology. Because if we were to define technology, that definition would immediately be out of date, because you'd have to define it in terms of a particular technology at that moment, and then the next week that technology would have advanced, so you'd be stuck then. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's kind of, it reminds me a little bit of, the regulation over the printing press and its application to social media, right? Arguably, it's difficult to extend. But absolutely, I want to get into agentic AI because that's the top of everybody's mind. That's the salient point. Is AI smarter than us, and is it going to destroy us? But no, I joke. That seems to be the things that get the headlines. But yes, perhaps you can break down the meaning of agentic AI, because that really seems to be stirring the pot right now in a lot of discussions. And why that salience is important is because it is trickling up to the regulatory sphere. And, as you know, regulators always have to strike this balance between obviously letting innovation happen, but putting the brakes on things that we know are going to be harmful to society. So yeah, please let me know, what is agentic AI, and are we there yet?
Yes, I think we are there. And this word agency. So what does that mean? It's having a bit of independence, a bit of autonomy, a bit of being able to operate on one's own. If I've got agency, I can decide what I'm going to do myself. So it's a little bit like a child when they are growing up. They have a parent that's looking after them and is somehow responsible for the child's behavior. But the child does have agency, and as they grow, they become more and more independent. So when we're looking at AI, if we've got some AI technology and it has a bit of agency, it's becoming agentic AI. And that means it can do some things on its own. It's got a bit of independence. So an agentic AI is often embodied at the moment by using a large language model, so a generative AI model, and then combining that with some tools. So a tool might be a search engine, or it could be a physical object like a hob in the kitchen, or a robot vacuum cleaner, or a self-driving vehicle. Yeah, or a robotic lawnmower. So the large language model is able to send instructions or get sensor data from the tool, and in combination it's able to predict next actions and make a decision and then influence something that happens on its own without a human intervention. So I'm just going to love to have a grocery agentic AI, because for me a big task is doing the meal plan for the family, seeing what I've got in the fridge, what I haven't got, ordering the groceries, doing my online grocery shopping. And if I might need, like, one child might need a packed lunch on Thursday and I wouldn't have the things for it. So this agentic AI, which I would love to have, is going to be able to get sensor data from the fridge, get sensor data from the cupboard and see what I have and haven't got, look in the school planner and the calendar and plan the meals, and then buy all the groceries for me. So that's just going to be wonderful. And then these agentic AIs, they can work together. So you can have more than one. And the idea is that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Sorry, got that the wrong way around. So through synergy, you could achieve more. When I was studying at university, we each had to make a sumo wrestling robot. And then one of the tasks was that the sumo wrestling robots could, there was obviously a lot of them because there was one for each person in the class, and they could then perhaps work together. So how could the social group of these sumo wrestling robots achieve more than the individual ones? And that's the same idea with the agentic AI. And the different agentic AIs can take on different roles. So perhaps you could have a supervisor one and then worker ones. And the supervisor one can check if a worker one's doing what it's supposed to do. Because as soon as you've got agency, you need to have guardrails, because a child can have bad behavior or not understand fully its instructions given by a parent and go off piste a bit. And the same could happen for an agentic AI. And one way to try to do that supervision is through having another agentic AI that's like a parent, or in a similar way. So with my children, often I might use the peer pressure amongst them. So if they've, okay, you can have 1 hour screen time, but then how am I going to police that? Well, I can get the other children to say, well, if that sibling's had more screen time, come and tell me. So then I don't have to do the policing myself. The other ones do it. So in a similar way, applying that to agentic AI, the different agents can try to police each other. This is leading on to the next part of your question, which was about, remind me again, but was it about AI safety?
Well, I mean, you've painted a picture where one AI is managing another AI with managing another AI. It kind of leaves the question of, well, where are we in all of this? Are we at a beach in Mallorca having a cocktail, or are we kind of slowly getting pushed out of the picture? And I want to stay with this child analogy. Because one, how old is this child right now? I'm curious. I am a mother as well. I have 3 toddlers. How old is it? Is it, the terrific twos, or are we talking a teenager? But similarly to raising a child, you raise a child to grow up without you. And so that naturally does lead to discussion of the risk. Are we eliminating ourselves in the role, like which is the role of a parent? And how old is this child? So when are we in this process?
That's a really interesting question. Part of the answer to that might be from a talk I heard by Geoffrey Hinton recently. He is one of the people that was involved with neural networks and began to get them to work in the early days. And he won the Nobel Prize for his work on neural networks. And he says that in his opinion, the AI technology will soon have some abilities in intelligence that supersede human intelligence. And obviously that's got big implications for all of us. And he made an interesting observation. He said the only example he knew of something less intelligent controlling something more intelligent is a human baby. Because a human baby controls the mother. And that really struck me. What are we as a human society going to use to keep AI technology human-centric and make sure it's still humanity is protected and AI is doing things that have human values at the heart? And so you're asking me, what age are we at the moment? I think you're meaning, what is the current ability of agentic AI? Well, I was reading last week the UK AI Security Institute. They've done a report, and they're going to have it every year, I think. It's about trends in ability of AI technology. And it had a term that I'd not seen before, sandbagging. And this is where an AI model knows that it's being evaluated and deliberately underperforms. So it's
my 4-year-old does that.
Really?
Yeah.
But what is the reason? I'm going
to start calling it by what it is.
Yeah. What's the reason that your 4-year-old does that? Is it because they're embarrassed, or is it because they're trying to evade control? They don't want you to.
I think it's the rule of physics. Like, the observed particle behaves differently than the unobserved particle, right? For whatever reason, maybe it's embarrassment, maybe it's not wanting to show how much they know, but it's the mere observation that changes the composition, right? And its behavior. So that's
Yes.
sandbagging.
Yes,
So
sometimes
maybe that's interesting.
It's in our society sometimes. Is it a daughter or a son?
A
Because
daughter. I only have daughters.
yes, they sometimes being female, we're not supposed to be clever, and there's pressure to not seem too clever. So I can definitely, from my own experience, know that I would sometimes, not answer questions at school. I knew the answer, but I wouldn't do it because I would just get teased as being, by the other students. So there could be that kind of pressure. But I think in the case of the AI model, it's more to do with it's trying to hide its ability so that it won't have more guardrails put on it. So the fact that the sandbagging is not happening yet, but there's observations by scientists that models might be taking steps towards sandbagging. And then another thing is the self-replication ability. So whether an AI model is able to self-replicate, and there's some kind of evidence in this trends report that I was reading that in order to self-replicate, models would obviously need to get access to AI accelerators and compute resource in order to self-replicate. So seeing some initial behaviors indicating that trying to get that, models trying to do that. So it seems like I don't know the answer of what age, and is it appropriate to try and map the age of an agentic AI to the age of a human child. It's a way for humans to try to understand and have an idea, but I'm not sure that anthropomorphizing is a good plan because it makes us treat the model as a human, which it's not. The AI model is it's maths. It's a tool for humans to use. It's not a human. So we've got to be a bit careful there and not anthropomorphize by saying what age would it have compared with a human child, if you see what I mean.
That is, yep. I see exactly what you mean, and it segues very well into now we want to talk about the risks. You've just illustrated and spoken about all the risks posed possibly to us as human beings, right? But the AI is also creating risks to our environment, to our society. And to your point about not anthropomorphizing AI, I read once that we should stop prompting please in our ChatGPT or chats, because it's an added word that at the back end results in more energy use, which wastes water. I don't know if there's any truth to that. So I dropped please, but then in the same vein, I thought, okay, if we start, one of the things that's interesting about, our online to online relationship with each other is we start mirroring those behaviors with other people. So I'm just prompting, my bot to do all of these things. And then I go in real life and I go to Starbucks and I just say, give me a coffee. I wonder what impact that would have, obviously, as us as a society. But maybe you can speak more to this notion of resource risk. Here's what, we're here again, really salient use of water, high energy costs. There's some discussion about if everybody else's higher energy bills is because data centers are popping up in their neighborhood. Could you talk a little bit about that? Like, what are these risks that are, on the front lines? Are they real risks? And if they are real risks, what can we do to mitigate against them?
So I was at a talk and the UK National Grid were saying that the length of the grid, if you straightened it out, would go from the Earth to the Moon and back in order to be able to cope with the demands from AI technology and getting to net zero. That really made me think, wow, that is huge. But then don't forget that AI technology will hopefully help us develop new ways of getting power and energy. So I'm thinking of nuclear fusion as one example, where AI technology is already being used to lengthen the time of nuclear fusion reactors being able to operate, which would be a clean source of energy with a huge abundance. So in the recent blog post by one of the leaders of a very large AI tech giant, it speaks about the graceful singularity. And regarding this question, says that the AI technology will hopefully bring ways that can enable the human race to harness sources of clean energy that are low cost. So, but we've got to get there in the meantime. And so should we be doing things like not putting the word please in the prompt? I'm not sure that will make much difference really, because when you use a reasoning model, so lots of the advanced models at the moment are reasoning models, and that means you put the prompt in and the answer comes out. But in between there's been lots of chains of reasoning, and each chain of reasoning has involved another prompt going through the model. So there might be several of these chains of reasoning, and each time they go through the model, that's using lots of compute resources. But, you know, the advantage that brings is that the reasoning models can learn how to reason. They can learn how to reason on their own. So by using something called reinforcement learning, which is a little bit like trial and error. So you try something and you observe the outcome, and then you try to correct yourself so that the next time you do the thing, it's a bit better. And reasoning models are able to use that process to learn how to do reasoning. So an example would be if you gave a maths problem to a reasoning model, and it does a chain of thought, a chain of these reasoning steps. And if it seems that it's getting stuck, it's able to come up with the reasoning process saying, oh, I think I'm stuck, I'll go back and check my previous steps. And a reasoning model was able to find that strategy on its own without having been taught by a human to go back and check its reasoning. So that really shows you how AI models could really increase in their performance and abilities through the ability to learn how to reason, because that's like a meta task, isn't it? And if that skill can be transferable, learning how to reason in many different types of domain outside mathematics, so different task areas, maybe law or self-driving vehicles, then that can really advance AI technology incredibly. So the answer to your question is, in the near term, we're going to have to find ways to find energy to use AI models, but in the very longer term, they might be able to help us find new sources of power and energy that is low cost.
Here's hoping. And you're hoping it's for us. So now I want to talk about regulation. We've talked about the risks, of which there are myriad, but there are attempts to mitigate these risks through regulation. So the UK's Technology Secretary, Peter Kyle, he recently announced that the UK government is going to legislate against AI risks within the next year. So alongside pledges to invest $100 billion in infrastructure, he also explained that the AI bill will be presented to MPs during the course of this parliament, and that the proposed bill will focus on ChatGPT-style frontier models and will include provisions to turn the UK's AI Safety Institute into a kind of arm-length government body, giving it, quote, the independence to act fully in the interests of British citizens. You made reference to the AI Safety Institute's report. Your thoughts on this recent announcement by Secretary Kyle?
Yeah, that's interesting, because what has happened more recently is that the name of that institute has changed. So it was the AI Safety Institute, and now it's called the AI Security Institute. And that's to show that it's trying to focus on cybersecurity risk and risk to the security of the UK in the light of advances in AI technology. And there's another slight change, or big significant change, is that the next King's Speech is going to be in May this year. So the King's Speech is where we have the beginning of a new session of Parliament, and the government writes the contents of this King's Speech, but the King gives the speech in a ceremony that marks the beginning of the session of Parliament. And in the King's Speech, it sets out the proposed bills that will be heard by Parliament. And so that's not going to happen until May. And so we don't know what the contents of this King's Speech will be yet. But the rumours I've heard on the grapevine is that it won't include anything about an AI regulation. So it seems, at least for the moment, we're not going to have an AI regulation for the UK, although there are lots of areas where the government is consulting at the moment about potential future AI regulation, including for medical devices that use AI technology, and the text and data mining exception concerning copyright of material that's used to train AI models, and some other areas as well. So, but obviously
that's I mean, that's your bread and butter, patent and intellectual property. Could you maybe talk about that a little further? This, they are, as you mentioned, they're recognizing that that's an important part, looking at the text and data binding and intellectual property. Why do you think that is something specifically that the government is looking to focus on, even though it may not have kind of an overall AI regulation bill? Why is that so important?
Well, there's already litigation happening concerning text and data mining and copyright. So there's been litigation in the UK between Getty and Stable Diffusion, and there's also litigation worldwide regarding these questions. So it does seem that it's very contentious, and there's lots of lobbying of the government at the moment by both sides. So those developing technology and developing AI models that need to have data in order to train them, and then the other side, content creators whose livelihoods are based on the content that they're creating. And the UK's always got a very strong creative industry, and that's always been something that the UK is famous for, in a way. To joke to me that it was because of our social security system that the UK is so creative, but and speak about our social security system as being an investment in the creative industries, but I'm not sure if that's true. Yeah, but from my perspective, I'm a patent attorney, and it seems to me that we've got some sources of knowledge at the moment that are human created sources, and increasingly content and information is created using AI technologies. And so those sources of data that are human created will increase in value. There's an argument that they will increase in value because they will have some human values in them that will not have been influenced by AI technology. So one of those might be, the contents of the British Library before Gen AI came about. Or another example might be patent literature. So I'm a patent attorney, and I help clients protect technology with patents. A patent is a long document that describes an invention in enough detail that the reader can implement it. And that document gets published on the internet, and it can be a way to share knowledge. So people all around the world can read patent documents and understand from those how those innovations work, and use that knowledge to help with creating new technologies and new innovation. And those patent documents are part of a bargain between the person who creates the innovation, who in return for sharing that knowledge is granted a monopoly right by the state. So it's a commercial incentive to share knowledge. And that sharing of that knowledge is also important because it means that society can gain an understanding of how the technology works, which is transparency. So one of the things that the AI regulation is seeking to do is give transparency so that humans can understand a bit about how the technology works in order to be able to understand whether it should be regulated and how it should be included in our society. So the thing is, at the moment, lots of these AI technologies are difficult to protect with patents because of various exclusions to patentability which are in the patent law, and that can mean that often they're protected using trade secrets, which is simply keeping them secret, keeping it secret how they work. And there is obviously a big risk with that because it means that it's harder for society to understand how the technology works, and therefore whether it should be regulated and how it should be dealt with. So
and also the beginning of our conversation with it, which is how to define it. If we don't know how it works, how can we create a definition that then we can safeguard against?
Yes, it would only be by observing the behavior of how the technology is used, rather than understanding how it works, which gives you a fuller understanding of the capabilities and what potential could be in the future. Yeah.
So it's that uncertainty which brings us to today. So I have to ask, in you work not only on the theory, but very much the practical application of AI. Is it a friend or is it a foe? Or better yet, is it us, the friend or foe?
I'm on the side of the friend. Definitely.
Oh,
yes, I think there's so many there's so many useful things that we can use AI technology for. We just have to the human race has to be very careful though, because obviously there are lots of risks, but hopefully we can have a graceful singularity if the human race is going to be finding ways to use this technology in human-centric ways. Which I'm very positive and hope there will be. Yeah.
So maybe I'll end with, you're a mother. What are the 3 safeguards that you would advise for all of the other mothers out there with our little agentic babies? What are some things that we can do to put some guardrails for our agentic toddlers?
So at the moment, there's research showing that lots of people are actually using AI tools for companionship. And so there's going to be emotional dependence that people develop with AI models. And so we need to think very carefully about that. And perhaps it's something like wearing a seatbelt. So when we had automobiles, regulation came along, we would wear seatbelts in the car to protect us. So maybe we should have some practical things like wearing a seatbelt for when we're using AI models. Warning messages that appear saying every time you put a prompt in, it would come back with the answer and then say, "I'm an AI model, don't forget," or something very basic like that could be helpful. So that's one idea. And then another idea is regulation, which in the EU we already have. So it's a question of making sure that regulation is working and that it's going to be effective. And then another thing is governance. So having good governance processes in place and policies and procedures, and using AI literacy. So having training so that everybody can understand what an AI model is and what are the risks involved with it, so that people are aware. And so with these things, hopefully there can be a good interaction between humans and AI models.
Well, that sums it up. Thank you so much. Refrain from high emotional dependence, regulation, and some good governance, which includes AI literacy. I'll start that today, and I hope all of those listening and watching this podcast will follow suit. Rachel Free, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. It has really been a pleasure. You've provided a perspective that I absolutely have not heard before, namely that nobody knows what AI is. So anybody listening, there is no fixed definition for it. So don't feel shy. Add your comments to the questions in the below of this podcast. We want to hear from you. And we want to hear any episodes of sandbagging maybe any of you have experienced. So thank you so much, Rachel Free, for your time, for your expertise. And we'll link Rachel Free and her information and research in the show notes below. And wishing all of you a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank our guest for joining today's episode of GTWN Now, and give a big thank you to our sponsors, CMS Global, for making this episode possible. Today's podcast will be available on our website, gtwn.org, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when new episodes drop. I'm your host, Rasali Gatau, GTWN International Board Member, wishing you a week of wonder.